Hey, welcome back everyone. It is now October 6th of 2020, and ever since the very end of the Skywalker saga, a lot of fans around the world have been very intrigued about the future of the Star Wars franchise by Disney, Lucasfilm, Bob Iger, Bob Chaypek, you name it, and exactly what they're all set and ready to deliver to the fans in the next couple of years to come for, of course, Disney Plus, theatrical releases, etc. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one thing that we do know about Disney Star Wars is that it is heading in a more positive direction, given that Kathleen Kennedy has little to no creative power as we speak. Thankfully, of course, she's only working on the Leslie Headland Star Wars TV series, and that's it. Nothing else beyond that. Now, one thing that we can actually go through here is that obviously that when we look and examine at the Star Wars franchise, there's a lot of work being put into it in order to really revive it, essentially. We have George Lucas, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni all working together as a team to deliver as much authentic Star Wars material as possible. Now, one thing that a lot of fans have been very curious about specifically all has to do with the numerous projects that are going to arrive on Disney Plus, both in live action and animated form, in the form of TV shows that Kathleen Kennedy is actually not going to be involved in. It's really going to give fans, I think, a better perspective on things about what Disney has pretty much, this big opportunity to take advantage of Star Wars without Kathleen Kennedy in the mix. Now, on top of all of this, what's really intriguing all has to do with George Lucas, the creator of all things Star Wars, as well as the president of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, by far one of the most highly criticized individuals in the film industry out there. So, with that being said, beyond this, with the Skywalker saga now over, both Disney and Lucasfilm have been developing their new Star Wars universe, as well as their new Star Wars trilogy of movies, in order to create a new mythology for the fans to enjoy around the world. Now, it's explained that as of right now, both Bob Iger and Bob Chapek have been developing numerous projects to evolve the franchise, with creators like George Lucas behind the scenes making major changes to the Star Wars universe. It's explained, however, that Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy is very much against the major changes happening from George, John, and Dave, since it no longer follows her own narrative. Kathleen Kennedy is said to have major issues with creator George Lucas and his plans for the future of the franchise, where in a recent interview in which Kathleen Kennedy was questioned about George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy went on to state that in her mind, George Lucas is stuck in the past and does not know exactly where to go for the future of TV shows and films, and that she believes that George did not fit the sequel trilogy when it came to his ideas, which is why she did not include his concepts in the sequel trilogy movies. Let's stop right here for a second. Now, we've seen this massive change. You guys may very well recall that originally George Lucas was signed on for Episode 9 to work closely with J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio to handle the final film of the Skywalker saga. This was a big deal, over a year ago, where a lot of, the segments of the film were being rearranged, and obviously a lot of fans were very much curious as to what J.J. Abrams was going to deliver for the very last film of the Skywalker saga. It was a big deal, and Kathleen Kennedy essentially messed it all up. And this all had to do with her not trusting George Lucas and pretty much being more, I guess you could say, stuck within her own narrative and trying to push her own personal agendas for the franchise. Now, on top of this, not just that, but Kennedy went on to unveil that in her mind, George Lucas had a very tough time with the prequel trilogy movies that lacked creativity and did not feel like Star Wars in any way, shape, or form, and that in her mind, the sequel films feel more like the Star Wars franchise than the prequel movies actually did back in the 1990s and the 2000s. Once again, this is Kathleen Kennedy pretty much having a morphed mind when it comes to Star Wars, of her believing that the sequel trilogy movies are far superior than the prequel trilogy movies. Now, you guys can have that opinion. If you guys agree with her, that's fine. But I just feel that, obviously, the prequels feel more like Star Wars than the sequels. Completely reversed from what Kathleen Kennedy believes of the sequels being better than the prequels and feeling more like Star Wars. To me, say what you will about the prequel trilogy, it feels more like Star Wars. It's more true to the franchise than what the sequel trilogy will ever be. So, For obvious reasons, Kathleen Kennedy, it seems like it's more of a biased opinion because she is the one who actually worked on the sequel trilogy movies. She's the one who pushed the overall narrative of how the movies would be told. So I could see as to why she would actually stick with her opinion being toward the prequel trilogy films. Moving on. So, with that being said, of course, now, many Star Wars fans, surprisingly, alright, actually not all that surprising, but many Star Wars fans have criticized Kathleen Kennedy for the mishandling of the franchise, and rightfully so. When questioned about when actually questioned about the backlash of The Last Jedi and the overall mixed feelings of the sequel trilogy, Kathleen Kennedy went on to blame George Lucas for all of this, since she believes that Star Wars fans are too attached to George Lucas and his ways with Star Wars. She believes that George Lucas was destined to take a permanent break after the prequels, and that it was probably the best thing for him to do in the long run in order to actually have Disney to pick up Star Wars and move away from George Lucas. Kathleen Kennedy continues to state that Star Wars fans are too much of a burden, or the ones that love George Lucas's work at least are, and that this was the main reason as to why they had to split away from Lucas's work on the sequel trilogy movies, etc. So once again, Kathleen Kennedy not only blaming George Lucas, but blaming the Star Wars fans for essentially being too much of a burden on the sequel trilogy movies. And that to me is just wrong. I feel that, if anything, Kathleen Kennedy should have felt very lucky. She should have felt very honored to even be working on these movies, given that you had, by far, one of the most popular directors of all time giving you the franchise over to yourself to handle, and just destroying it was so wrong. In my book, I think that obviously if you are in Kathleen Kennedy's position, you're given this franchise over by George Lucas, and for Disney to actually take care of that as well. Kathleen Kennedy, at the very minimum, could have actually done things with common sense, given the fans what they actually wanted to see, and we've gone over what we actually, talked about what the fans wanted to see on the big screen numerous times, and I'm sure that you guys are very well aware about what we talked about. But overall, the sequel movies, they really could have had a lot more to do with the overall Skywalker lineage. So beyond this, Kathleen Kennedy blamed George Lucas even for Colin Trevorrow's script of Episode 9, since he convinced Colin to insert many aspects of the prequel trilogy movies, and that even the title of the film, Duel of the Fates, was suggested by Lucas to Trevorrow, and that Kathleen Kennedy was 100% against this actual decision, and did not like the path that they were going with for the original version of Episode 9 at the time. Lucas is now back over at Lucasfilm, working hard with Favreau and Filoni in order to redeem the Star Wars franchise and to make it feel fresh and new for the fans around the world to enjoy once more. Kathleen Kennedy so far is still only working on the Leslie Headland Star Wars TV series for Disney+, thankfully. So here's the thing that's very important that a lot of fans need to know, and this is a very important aspect of Star Wars, is that we have George Lucas really on a mission here to revive Star Wars. In fact, he's going to make the Skywalkers relevant again. He's not going to leave them in the dust. He's going to explore the Skywalkers on Disney+, be it, of course, Luke, Ben Solo, Anakin, and even a new, currently unnamed Skywalker that Garrett Hedlund is actually in the talks to portray. We actually went over this just yesterday if you guys want to go ahead and check it out. But overall, I think that George, John, and Dave really do have everything that they have in their hearts and their minds to provide Star Wars fans to really kind of deliver something new to the franchise that we have never seen before, and something that really is going to strike the fans with interest. I think that at the end of the day, you need that excitement and you need that interest from the Star Wars fans to really keep things going, and obviously The Mandalorian is a prime example of that, and just the beginning of what, George, John, and Dave can actually do moving forward now. So, yeah, guys, like I've said, I think that Kathleen Kennedy, given that she's no longer involved for the most part, things really are going to change for the better. So like I've said, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon we hear them once again.